Welcome everybody. See this guy down here? He is a beginner at this live stream thing because he totally forgot to change his microphone, and that's why I'm back here doing this again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a voiceover and do my first voiceover for my second live stream. So here we go. So I have no idea how this is going to work out, but let's just try it anyway. And yeah, so thanks for checking out this video. This is John from ContraBIM, where we build tools and templates and anything that can help you be better with working within ArchiCAD and using BIM and virtual design and construction techniques in general. So what I want to do today is really dive into one of my favorite subjects, which is cast in place concrete, and how to model that, how to estimate it, and go from point A to point B. In this case, point A is ArchiCAD and point B is Excel. So that's the goal for this live stream that I'm doing this voiceover on, and let's see how it goes. So yeah, some of the major things we're going to cover are just modeling, how to set up schedules and kind of look at the different properties and everything that goes into a schedule. We'll talk about units and quantity types because that's really important to the estimating workflow. And it's just really important for understanding how you're driving, what quantities you're using and how you're driving those quantities into your estimate in a format that can work. So, okay, so here we are. We're in ArchiCAD right now, and what we're looking at is this is actually a project template file that we produce here at ContraBIM. And so this is really the general contractor's BIM template built within ArchiCAD. That's the purpose that I had when I set this up originally. And so that is essentially what this template is all about. So, yeah, so there's really a lot of things that go into it. There's what we're looking at right now is these are just predefined viewpoints, sections, I should say, on the floor plan. And let's see, where are we going to go? I'm talking about something at this point. Yeah, so this is a project template file. It's just a blank file. There's nothing in it except for the predefined views. And so what I'm going to do is we're switching over now to, this is actually the virtual library that I've built that has a ton of different elements, all broken out by CSI master format. And these are essentially how I look at assembling different costs within ArchiCAD, is just how I'm going to build the trade packages that are actually going to support the bidding and estimating process. So if we're zooming out here, and you can see this is really broken down all the way through. At this point, I'm through division 33 using the latest master format version. And so if we zoom in here, you can see a bunch of elements for plumbing, for MEPs, finishes, but the focus of today is going to be all about concrete structures. So yeah, if we look in our view map over here, where are you going, John? Where are you going? Yeah, so there's two parts to this that we're looking at. Is we have below is just the library component. The module builder that we're looking at here is actually how I like organizing my content from my library before I actually place it into the project. So I use the module builder as a way of kind of just developing the model content planning. And the best practice for that is just to, you know, from a contractor perspective, as you get your documents, you go through, you review them, and then you break out your, say, different footing schedules, column schedules, beam schedules, in this case for concrete, and you can develop that and then essentially assemble that into a module that you can then just you know, save as a module and link into your project, your working project. And what's nice is you can you know, overwrite that module and have it update in your project later if you do decide to make changes. So so what I've assembled already for this tutorial is we have foundations here, which essentially in this case we're going to be doing a mat foundation, 5 foot thick, with column foundations around the perimeter at a podium, and grade beams at exterior shear walls. So you'll see this when we actually start building the model. The vertical systems for the superstructure is a combination of shear walls, a core as well as an additional shear wall, and we got an 8-inch PT deck typical with a 12-inch structural deck on the lower levels at the podium. Then of course we have columns, we have a few other little details such as I think that's a concrete curb, and we got some stairs. And yeah, so at this point what I'm doing here is I'm saving this off as a module by copying to my clipboard, and then you go up to file there and do a save as to clipboard, or sorry, save as module from clipboard, and overwriting this concrete high-rise structural module that I had created previously. And at this point, okay, we're jumping back from the library over to the project template file, which is a blank file. And real quick, I think in order to get you kind of situated with what's in this template file is we're just going to point out and go through some of the view map items here. So there's several sections already placed into the project, so they're actually pulled off to the side to the left here. There's actually a few for trades also, but most of them are just general based on grid lines or for stairs or for cores or whatever you need. If I go over here under the view map, I'm rolling a few things up, and you can see under the stories we have it's essentially a 3-story building with foundations and a roof structure. So it's kind of built for just a typical building, and then from there you can modify the stories and add stories, subtract them, create basements, and do whatever you need to do from the structure there. So okay, so where are you going next, John? It's tough to tell. I don't know what you're talking about at the moment. Okay, so we're going to our view map here, and really this is broken out into 5 different sections. The first is design documents, which is really the location within the view map that I use for dragging in either PDF content, PDF design documents, or DWG backgrounds from your design disciplines. So this is where you would place all your architectural floor plans, your demo plans, your structural plans, MEPs, and so on. So these are all clone views. So even as your project expands in terms of stories, those are going to change with it. So it's a real easy place that you can just overlay, or you can bring in any type of content, whether it's PDFs or DWGs, or that's really the purpose of these design document folders. But yeah, you can bring them all in, overlay them against each other, and then really start reviewing things in context and in scale. So the second part here is modeling views, which is all broken out into master format. Sorry, not master format. It's broken out into unit format, systems classifications. And so those are actually what we're going to be using today, which is going to be modeling views, just filtered for the content we want to see. So foundations, the superstructure are the main views we're going to be looking at today. As you roll that up, then we got our trade views, which is essentially views and clones of the floor plans and sections set up for shop drawing submittals. So we use these the same way as the design documents. It's just a location where you can bring together your actually place your shop drawings in context of your project, and then you can start overlaying them against other shop drawings. You can overlay against your modeling views, or you can overlay against your design documents as well. So it's really another way of connecting information regardless of the file format, and placing that into BIM context that you can then thoroughly review. So yeah, those 3 really work in conjunction. The open BIM is just another way of bringing in additional content, IFC file types, DWG file types, point clouds, Revit files through IFC, obviously, and yeah, there's a number of exports as well, either exporting by systems, which is how a lot of the design or the modeling views are set up for anyway, and then exporting by specification, which is just dialing into individual scopes or bid packages. Really helpful there for producing bid packages you can send to individual subcontractor. So finally here we got the reports, which is really where the heart of the ContraBIM system is built around. And so today we're going to be looking a lot at this trade quantities for cast in place concrete 033. And so that is that's really the main topic today, and that's we're going to spend quite a bit of time in this report generating quantities as we build the project. And yeah, hopefully I can do a decent enough voiceover to this that it actually makes sense. So let's close that up, John. And where are you going? You're spinning that mouse around a lot. Okay, we're going to merge that module in, or we're going to place the module, I should say. And so we're going to go in, and the module that we saved out, which is actually showing up there already, but we're going to kind of walk through the process here. We're going to select that. We can see all the different types that we can import, whether it's ArchiCAD PLN, modules, IFCs, Rhino, Revit file types. You can hot link directly into ArchiCAD now, which is awesome. So we'll definitely do another video centered around that workflow. But of course we're using a module today, so go ahead, John, and click on that module. And let's hit select, and we need to, in this case we want to merge all the stories, because some of those elements that we saved out were placed on the second but shown on the first, or placed on foundations and shown on the first. So we'll go ahead and we'll merge this entire project and or module. And so here I'm placing this on a hotlink module catalog master, which is the master layer that controls this. The ID right there, 033 underscore, is just a note that I'll put that will go in front of every element ID in this particular project, so that we can tell which ones are coming from the module and which ones are actually native and internal. And finally we have our elevations and adjustments to the stories. So actually this project template file that we're working in today is actually built right from the library file itself. So all the story settings are the same, and everything should link up pretty nicely automatically. So let's go ahead and hit place hot link. John, do it. Okay, there we go. Okay, so gonna take this, we got to match up our street views, or level 1 to level 1, just to make sure things come in on the right story. Hit OK, and we'll paste in the center of the current view and drag that down so that it's outside of where we're going to build our project. And just by clicking outside of it, it turns it into a linked module. So we can actually see here that several of the elements are not turned on that we thought we were saving out, and I'm pretty sure that that is going to be a I know that's a renovation filter issue, because I've already been here and I've tried to figure this out. It was stumped there for a second. Thank God it didn't take very long. But yeah, if you go to change it from demo plan, which we can tell that these elements are probably just on an existing renovation filter, that's why they're showing. We change it to a plan status, we can see that everything else turned back on. So that's something that needs to be fixed in the library, of just changing all those elements so that they're all set to new, because this is a new project in this particular tutorial. So let's go now and look at our quantity report for concrete. And we're going to see that because we've now placed elements into the project, we can see them populating on our in our interactive report here. And you can also notice that every single one of those element IDs has that 033 underscore, which is telling me that everything in this report right now is coming from a module. So you can't edit any of this stuff. I'm clicking on some of those values that if it was native or if it was internal, you could actually change that package to a number of different packages for pricing breakdown later on in the estimate. But in this case, yeah, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be talking about here. Keep going, John. Keep going. Okay. So I think at this point we're pretty much ready to set up our building grids. And so what I'm doing here is I'm going and navigating through, and I'm just going to go to a first floor plan that's filtered for the types of essentially under that A10 foundations. I think it just has all my substructure layers turned on, as well as my superstructure. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to add in some grids, and I'm going to be using the just the square grid pattern, and I'm not going to be placing any objects or columns at the intersections. Same thing with beams. We're going to leave those out. We can certainly just leave the dimensions. That's fine. And then we're going to anchor. I always like anchoring things from the bottom left corner because I like placing that right on my 0 point. But to make the this video faster, we are just going to be, instead of focusing much on design and tweaking of dimensional type things, we're just going to use a standard 25-foot grid in both directions and make it just really quick and easy to model and copy things around, so that we don't waste a whole lot of time trying to make small adjustments. And so, okay, John, go ahead and hit that OK and place it in there. Come on, do it. Oh, layers. Control. Under control, I have a few different types, either layout points or grid lines or working points. So, okay, so there's our grid. Let's go ahead and place it right on the 0 right there. And in this case, I'm not giving it any type of rotation. So just click and add that to the project. And then, of course, once it's placed, you can go in and just select it, and you can tweak the style. It will make those grids a little larger and the marker slightly larger. I don't know why, but I always like changing the marker shape to a 6-sided hexagon, like that kind of square look. So, okay, we got grids. And I can see now my modules disappeared on me, and I got a feeling that that's because my hot link module is not turned on in all my layer combinations for these combinations of systems. You can see there I got A10, A20, B10, and a bunch of different combinations based on these systems classifications. And so if we turn that back on, we can see those elements have populated. And because we were filtered on a layer combination for, I think it was just the superstructure, some of those foundations were turned off. But actually I can see that the annotation on these was also turned off from those layers. So something to consider when you're saving out your modules, if you want to actually have some of those line works and text on layers that might be hidden. Depending on your view setting, it might make sense just to keep it all on the architecture or ArchiCAD layer, and then you can still control that with the hotlink module. So, okay, so at this point, we're going to talk a little bit about what type of structure we're going to build, and where we're going to start is essentially I want to build just a tower, and that's what I'm highlighting right here. That's 17,500, and this tower is going to be coming out of a podium structure, which will be probably 4 or 5 stories. And so we're going to have a tower protruding from a podium structure. And so this is going to give us the chance to model a mat foundation underneath the tower. And then we'll just add in a few other footing types for some of the perimeter columns and shear walls that we're going to add. So, okay, so John, go in there and pick up the... pick up that mat foundation with the eyedropper and create your mat foundation for the shape of your tower. And so there we go. We got it in there. It's on our foundation level. It's still showing up on our first floor just because we have that in the settings here. And okay, so there we go. And if we go over to our quantity trade report for our concrete here, let's see. we can see that right there is our that's the element that we just added. We can tell because it doesn't have that 033 underscore. But we can also now tell that it's not part of that module because it's not frozen, and we can actually go in and change our trade package depending on what pricing package we might want to locate this element within. And so we got 10 different options here, and those can all be modified and changed around as needed. Understanding what type of element you're using in these types of schedules is really important because different elements produce quantities in different means. So beams are different than slabs, different than walls, and so on. So having that type in our schedule is really important when it comes to the formulation later on when we have to do if and scenarios of if it's a slab and it's square footage, then we want to pull from a certain value. So, but we have here this general quantities, a few columns under general quantities, and those are quantities that apply to all different element types regardless of how it's drawn. And so for concrete, having cubic yards as the unit of measurement for how we're providing our pricing and our unit costs, that's kind of by default for concrete the best format. It works in most cases, and it allows us to simply just use that general volume parameter to really drive the quantities for all those different element types regardless of type. So going into the scheme settings here at the top, we can see we just have all element types and a CSI code as our filter. But if we wanted to go in and add a hot link source, specifying that we don't want our hot link source in this particular schedule, then we can do that by just adding that into the criteria. So if we apply that, then we can see that the only thing in the schedule now is just that mat foundation. So with that, I think it's about time to go back and do some modeling there, John. Come on. What are you going to talk about? Okay, I think what I'm going to do here, okay, so what I'm doing is I'm actually going to walk through very quickly how we go from ArchiCAD and link that into Excel. And so if we go over to the publisher here, we're looking at all of these trade packages that are all specified reports within the ContraBIM template. And so this is how we're running different reports depending on the, how those elements are modeled, what data is available, what criteria we need, what parameters and information we might need to really customize and fine tune each one of these different trade packages that we can use for not only building an estimate, but we can also use this for sending and receiving informations from bidders, and also sending all this quantity data out to your estimating team so that they can go through and condition the unit pricing or the detailed pricing. And so what we're going to do here is we're just going to export all this right into our episode 002 working file, and we're just picking the location under reports where essentially it'll build a file format. So we're publishing it directly under reports, and it's creating that folder called trade quantities CSI. So so that's all we need to do is just publish to our reports, and we can from there link that directly into our estimate template. So go ahead, John, and hit publish. I'm not sure if you did or not. Okay, so you're going over to your estimate template here, and so this is really the home page, which identifies all the data sources coming in with when they were last published and what sheet and what cell those sources are mapped to. So that's really the whole concept behind this estimate template worksheet, is that it's one single estimate file that pulls in this case, I think about 60 individual cost reports that are broken out into the specific bid packages we want to use. So that's really the logic behind it. And by doing this, it allows us to refresh directly from that source file whenever it's republished, so that we're not adding any formulas or anything into those published files. We're taking those published files and linking them into a an entire estimate worksheet, and then summarizing and doing all of our calculations and everything within here. So it's a central way of managing cost data coming from a ton of different sources. So right now this particular estimate is blank. There are no quantities in here or any values coming out of it, but they are all predefined and loaded in just as blank, just so that it's really a placeholder for linking in costs in the future when you start adding it. So I just republished that file, and if I hit refresh here, it's going to just load in, and we can see that one single mat slab foundation that we've added to our model now. So everything coming in here that I'm selecting on the right, that's the data source coming from ArchiCAD, and so we can refresh that anytime, and we can see the extents of that block of data coming through. And what I like about this is it's just a really raw and open way of interacting with it, because everything on the left is data from external, and then everything on the left here is formulated from the data on the right. So I think I mentioned that backwards there, but yeah. So anyway, this formula is just pulling from values over from our data source coming through from ArchiCAD. So that's true for all these, but really the one really super important formula is the one for our source quantity, because that's the big one, and that's the one that goes in and finds, depending on the element type, whether I'm pulling a linear footage for a beam, or if I'm just simply pulling a cubic yards for any of the element types, or if I'm pulling stair treads for concrete stairs, or whatever it may be. So we have a lot of flexibility in that formula to really craft it depending on what elements we're bringing into each individual estimate sheet, and what data we really have to work with. So what's nice is this is all customizable and easy to manipulate, and even a beginner in Excel, if you just kind of follow and click through the paths here, it's really easy to take these things, adjust them. It's easy to break them too, but it's very easy to fix them at the same time. So it kind of forces you to really know what data you're bringing through, what that source, what those quantities are, to ensure that the process is really predictable. And the reason I really like this is it really forces you to understand what sources you're bringing through. So because I think a big challenge in this industry is receiving models from external team members and trying to estimate based off them without having any idea how they were assembled, how the quantities are going to spit out, and whether those quantities are even good. So, okay, so we can see here in 3D that we've just added that one mat foundation. And in terms of elevation on this project, what we're going to do is we're going to set it 1 foot below finished floor. And so that's just going to be a nice clean number for extending all of our walls and columns and different elements down to just kind of one flat elevation for our top of footing. So certainly projects get complicated in terms of sloping on slope sites, or parking structures are always sloped. Those are always fun for determining elevations, but we're going to make it easy today and just simply have everything flat. And so, okay, let's go ahead, John, and what are you going to do next? I think you're going to let's add a core to this project. So we're going to go ahead and pick up this 033 cast in place wall 24-inch, and we are going to add a core structure. And as we go up in the project in terms of stories, we can reduce those, as we noted there, just in terms of what's in our content, model content library there. So in terms of the size of the core, this is obviously dependent on how many elevators and stairwells and additional rooms and functionality you might need, depending on what your building type is, for a high-rise concrete structure. In this case, we're essentially kind of modeling something either based off a hotel or a high-rise residential apartment building or condo building. So one of the main things you want to think about is just what's that inside clear dimension. And so having the reference line for this tool on the inside actually makes it a little easier to determine that specific inside clear dimension. And so what you're going to do here is specify an exact dimension, John. And in this case, I'm going to use, what is it that I'm doing? 40 feet for my X direction. And then my Y direction, maybe I'll do 20 feet because you could fit two elevators side by side pretty easily in 20 feet because you typically need 9 to 10 feet in width and in depth. So depending on your size of your elevator or if it's a freight or whatnot. But okay, so we can take this core now and we can really snap it to any grid corner or take it and modify it around and find the best placement for it in our project. And I guess that looks good. Decent bay depth on the one side, and then the other side we can have 2 bays deep in terms of our column spacing. So that should work out just fine. And we're just going to take that bottom dimension and set that to -1 just to make sure that that is picked up on our sitting on our mat foundation. So we'll add another shear wall over here as well. Typically if you have your core offset like this, then you'll have another shear element kind of running opposite of the long direction of your core. And so that's what we've done right here. And I think that's what I was trying to explain with all that mousing around. Okay, so let's take that shear wall and let's add in a few just external shear walls around the perimeter of the building here. And yeah, let's grab a smaller one because this is only going to go up so far. And so let's snap that over 75 feet. That's fine. 75 feet in that direction. And okay. Just the bottom elevation to make that our -1 where we're starting. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll pick up our grade beam. And we're going to add our grade beams and we'll extend this a little bit past it. If it's 75 feet, looks like I'm doing 95 feet, and we'll have a 10-foot overhang on each side. Probably more than what we actually need, but oh well. Take that and just copy and rotate it around, and there we got some beams. So go back and let's check that schedule, John. So yeah, we can see those grade beams. We now have our, we had our mat foundation before, but we also have our cast in place walls. So you can see our quantities here. If I uncheck this merge uniform items, we can see all the unique elements or individual elements. But sometimes on projects when you have a ton of the same element, it's really nice to just roll things up, and our quantities will still come through because when you merge uniform items in ArchiCAD, it'll automatically calculate and sum the totals there for you. So we're not losing out any volume just by not listing every single instance here. So if you go ahead and publish that, since we've already established that link with our Excel estimating sheet, we can just refresh it and we can see that our estimate is growing, which is really nice because as you start modeling these things, it's really, nice to go in and just refresh and check and, kind of see how much cost you're adding to the project at each individual step or each floor that you add in. So we'll offset that mat slab just a little bit, and let's start adding some columns. And what are you going to pick here, John? I think you're going for, do that 24 by 42. And just start dropping that in there. And real quickly, using my favorite tool, the multiply, we can do an increment and spread. Just make sure you're not picking the path first. I can never figure that one out. And let's just copy this around, and we're just going to kind of speed model this so that we're not wasting a whole lot of time and we can talk about other things. So let's snap that over and just grab all that. We can pull it up just by snapping from our grids. And okay, so we now got columns under our floor construction. How many we got? got 22. Okay. So let's do those interior columns. So maybe we'll pick a different size just to get a little bit more, a few different shapes in here, and really no purpose other than that. I'm gonna rotate that, I guess. Increment and spread. Undo that one. Copy up, and don't need them that close to the core. Get rid of that one. Get rid of that one. And okay, we've got a few little gaps in there. Maybe we'll add a larger column. So we can drop that one in, or just apply to that setting. Transfer those settings. Transfer that one. Although maybe we'll just add another here. Okay. Rotate it. And one more on the other side. Okay, we got our columns for our tower. And there we go. We can see them 3D. And if we zoom in here, the greatest thing about ArchiCAD is the 3D OpenGL window, which really is so much better than other 3D modeling platforms, just in terms of being able to see and understand what the hell is going on. So obviously we can see that those columns are not sitting on our foundation. So grab them all real quick just with the selection tool. And yeah, it looks like those are sitting on there. We already fixed those. Yeah, so I think you already adjusted those, John. And yeah, let's now switch over to, and let's add a pad footing or a column foundation with the, in this case, the column tool. So columns work a little bit different in terms of visibility than the slabs or the beams. They're a little bit tougher to get to work on if you want to have them show up across stories. So I'm actually going to place these on my foundation level, because that's the best way of getting them to show up if it's entirely below my finished floor elevation. So we can have this, and we'll just set this on our home story. And we can check our depth. I'm going to make this a little thicker. We'll go 8 by 8 by 3. And you can adjust that down 4. 1 is our top. So, okay. There we go. And we can start copying these around. But before we do that, maybe I think you jump up here and let's add a column so that we can copy columns and their foundations at the same time. Would be a little bit of a productivity enhancement. So let's add that there. And to get this to show up down below, I'm going to need to change that elevation. Right now it's on home story. If I change it to all relevant stories, I can get that to actually show up on both by making it cross the line between those two stories. So by setting this to -1, that will then cut right through into my foundation story, and there we can see that column. So let's delete this other one, and we're going to take these two, and we can just let's just copy that around. Not yet. Let's change our beams here. I guess I was noticing that those beams were not showing up on my foundation level, so I wanted to have those in there just for reference before I started copying. And just adjusting my elevations here. We'll grab this whole thing in 3D. Just check to make sure that we're good. We're not. You screwed that up when you were transferring stories. So drop it down a foot. And there we go. Okay, so let's take those footings and columns now, John, and drag those around. Multiply. pretty much have it. That's all the column foundations we're going to need. And let's just change those because those were not showing up on our level below. So now they are. We need to do the same thing with our walls. So grab those walls and all relevant. They were already set to -1 foot, but they weren't set to all relevant. That's why they weren't showing up. So, okay. So let's also add just some perimeter wall foundations. That's kind of ties this whole thing together. That segment. We'll just draw these directly through our columns because those will get automatically cut out in our volumes. So it's okay if we have overlapping elements. We'll put a few intermediate beams to tie this all together. And there we go. Our schedule is growing. We got more data coming through. If we unmerge these, we can see we got a lot of columns now and several instances. So we can go ahead and publish this and go back and let's check our costs and where are we at. Okay, so we're coming along with our foundations and our structure coming out. It's probably time to add a, what are you going to do? You're going to add a thickened mat section below your elevator core. So let's go in and we can actually just model this in 3D by picking up those parameters. It's going to go in high. Let's change it to our foundation level and let's just drag that down and we'll snap it to the bottom corner of our mat foundation. And what we can do is simply just offset this and get that to extend out a bit on each side. So what are you going to do, John? 8, 10 feet, 8 feet. And a little trick to get a nice slope on this is if you actually go in and, oh, what are you doing? You're changing it to, okay, much more thickened section, 14 feet below. But what you can actually do here is if you change the angle on this to 45, you can give yourself a nice little slope, which a lot of these deep sections below your foundation typically slope like that. A lot of the times your entire mat will be sloped slightly if you're trying to push your methane out to the sides or to collect it. So, okay, so one thing to do is we should probably cut out that a space here out of our initial mat. And let's cut that out for our elevators. So let's make this maybe just 10 feet there is probably deep enough for our elevator pit. And let's see in 3D to make sure that shows up just right. Okay, there we go. And okay, I'll change the name on this, just to let me know that it's different in my interactive schedule here. So it's always nice to provide a little bit of extra detail in the element IDs just to really distinguish one element type from another, especially if you're copying around things and then modifying after the fact. Okay, so we're now going to add in our slab on grade here. So I'm going to go up one level and I'm going to grab my come in here. I'm just going to grab a standard slab on grade, 6 inches, and I'm just going to actually trace this whole thing out pretty much to the extent of my entire project here. And the one area that I'll actually cut out is I'm going to cut out around my core. and I actually need to add in then an interior element of this to get that interior core element back. So I'm going to change the name on that slab on grade 6-inch at the core. And okay, so let's go check that out, make sure that came through okay. And now we have on our slab on grade, and we got those two elements. We got our square footage, we got our volume. In this case, my slab on grade, I'm actually using just a unit cost based on that square footage, and that actually feels a little low to me. I'm going to actually bump that up to maybe $5 per foot. But what's nice about this is at the end of the day, we can always just come back through and modify these unit costs real quickly, and select a lot of content in our project at once and change it right here in the model. And then all we got to do is refresh it, and that's going to build up our estimate. So since you guys can now hear me, I'm going to just walk through this step one more time and talk a little bit more about what I did the first time. So of course, my publisher, I'm pointing to a specific folder where I'm sending all my reports, and I'm going to just refresh my publisher here. And as we come over to the estimate template, we'll see that right now we don't even have a slab on grade category here under uniform map. But if I refresh now, since I've published that, this is just going to keep building that data set and adding those elements in. So I can see the value of those specific quantities coming through. So yeah, we got 48,000 square feet at $5 a square foot is giving us about $250,000 right there. So, okay, so let's go back, and we're almost to the point where we can just fly through this thing and crank out the rest of this tower. But let's add a few things in here just before we continue up. So one of the things I'd like to add into these cores is we need to add a few openings here for the doors going into our elevator and stair shaft. So I'm going to give it a 6 foot there, and I'm going to just essentially, I'm going to just offset this about 6 inches, and I would typically have a shaft wall running right through here. So I would probably offset this door to align perfectly with that once I had that in there. But in this case, we're just going to do a double core. I'm going to snap that there to make sure that it's where I want it. And I'm going to pull one more over here, and I'm going to make this one just slightly smaller because I'm going to use this as an opening to get into the stair right here that we are about to drop in. So I do have a few stair elements loaded up. These are, I got two versions of them here. Got a straight and a curved. And so we'll probably just be using, obviously in the core, we're going to need that element. And actually, instead of drawing it, because right now if I tried to draw this, I don't know if I would get it very close. It's not going to work. Instead of wasting time messing around with the stair tool, which is a fun one to play around, I'm just going to grab the corner I want from this element I already have. And because I have my module suspended, I can grab that one element directly out of my module, and I can copy one element out without breaking my module link or anything. So I'm going to do that, spin it around, and let's check how that's matching up in 3D. So we'll bring everything back. I'm going to fly over here, and it looks like we're good. I believe that there is right on the top point where I wanted it. And so, okay, so that should be good for now. Let's continue. So I probably have another one of these just literally straight over and probably right against this core wall here, or a shear wall right there. And I probably need some of these maybe in the corners of my garage. So maybe we'll just line one up, about like that. This one, yeah, I might be able to push it into that location just a little bit to get it out of the way. And next, what I want to do is I actually want to add in a ramp here, because my intentions for this is we're going to have a tower coming out of this portion, and then on the stories above this, as we work up through our superstructure, on these first few levels, we're going to use these as I would assume like parking decks or retail or mixed use space. So I'm going to actually draw in or model in now a ramp. So I'm going to pick up my parameters there, and let's come over and grab my point line, and we can just pull this all the way. So that's just for the fill. Don't really need that. And actually what I might do here, well, let's go to 3D. Let's see where that's coming in. And this is a perfect time. I mentioned before that I have several sections pulled over here. This is a perfect time to just grab one of those, and we'll pull that in. It says grid line F, but we'll pull this over, and let's just drop one about right there, and I'll rename that to now grid line M, because that's where we're on. And let's just check our slope in this section. So open with current view settings, and okay, so we have these. And then a lot of the times when I'm modeling ramps, I always like having like a little bit of a soft transition and then a steep incline. So let's actually do that right now. What I'm going to do is, and maybe I'll add in some guidelines here to go from, maybe we'll offset it just like 5 feet on this side. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to split this element, and I'm going to move that working point right there. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side, is we'll just pull this over, and instead of going 75 feet, if I go 65 feet, that puts it 5 feet off there, and we'll split that again, and then just move our pivot point over. So now we have one there, we have one there, and we have one there. We also have all these little fill tools, which I could probably just turn off. I don't really care about those too much, but just to keep them on the elements themselves, we'll pull those over. And okay, let's check our section. So what I need to do is I'm going to just adjust this up, and depending on what jurisdiction you're in, you probably have some requirements on your transitions, but in this case, I'm just going to do a nice easy 3% on the top, 3% on the bottom, and let's see where this falls in the middle here. So to slope that all the way up, that puts it over 10%. So maybe I'm going to go with 5% here, and I'm going to pull that down. It's probably not going to change that 10% too much, but we'll just do that to see, to try to get it under that 10%. Oops, I don't think I snapped to it right there. So let's pull that over, and we'll pull this up. So 9.7. So at least that gives it a bit of a slope there. So if we go to 3D, there we go, have that in there. We could actually start cutting out some of these slab edges that are probably a little bit off, and maybe I'll do that from this point here out to about that point. And depending on if they're filling this space in or not, I could of course just adjust this over if I wanted to fill that ramp in. But I could also say that it looks like a great place to put some storage, so maybe I would add in a something right there, and then maybe I would put a like a retaining wall right here. Crop to top, sure, we'll do that. And I'm just going to make this not quite so thick. We'll just go 8 inches, And I'm going to change my name on there. And okay, so that's already sitting on the edge of that footing. So, okay, I'm going to call this actually a head wall because that's what it is. And okay, so we can actually just continue this on. So this is why I love ArchiCAD, is it's so easy to just model stuff as you go. So automatically wants to trim the top, and of course I need a footing here, so I'm just gonna spin this around, pull this over, and we'll just take that to about there for now. Drop it down -1 foot. Oh, don't want to drop that. I want to just change the bottom. But that's why sometimes clear all connections. I don't know why it does that. I really hate that sometimes, where after you've entered that element in there, it cuts it for you once you've trimmed it. Let's clear all connections, and now that's not even working. So anyway, I'm not going to waste any more time on this, but okay, so there we go. Let's continue now, and let's start. We got pretty much everything on this first floor, so we will go ahead, and I'm going to just give this a quick save, and let's go ahead and we will start in on our second floor here. So I'm going to go up 1 level, and I can see my stairs coming through. I can actually see that beam that I drew in 3D is not where it should be, so I'm just going to go stick it on my foundations. And okay, so down here I do have a few elements. A 12-inch deck, if I hover over, an 8-inch, and a 6-inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just pick up the parameter for that that 12-inch deck. We'll make a pretty thick structural slab in this case, and I'm going to turn on my my level 1 superstructure just as a reference, so that I can see exactly what it is that I'm tracing over. And make this red. We can fade it out a little bit. So at this point, I'm going to be drawing the extents of my deck in this case. And so I'm just going to pull it out right to the edge of my column there. And over on this side, because that wall is inset a little, maybe it would make more sense to have it outset, but it's fine. We'll come up here and we'll just pull this in to hit on that deck. And actually that one we might actually pull. This one, because we got that ramp coming up, we need to pull this all the way over, now that I think about it. On this side here, I'm going to just trim out some of this. And because all those columns are outset, we will leave them there. And okay, the other thing is I need to trim out this component. Because the shear walls are going to go up first, you're going to be pouring those one level after another, and you're not going to have your slab intersecting those like you would other elements such as, columns or beams. And so we'll just leave that as is like that. And I'm also going to cut out, I'm actually going to grab my 6-inch slab here, and I'm going to just check to make sure that I'm on my right, my elevated decks. And I'm going to actually just fill this in, and I'm going to subtract out that one location for my stair coming through. So you can just click it there and to there. And again, I'm just going to call this PT slab 6-inch at core. Okay, so let's see how we're looking in 3D. Okay, so we have that in there. We're probably going to have a few things to clean up here, like our columns. If we grab all of our columns that are of that height, 12'6". That should pick up all of our first floor columns. And what we really need to do is height and home offset. Let's go in here to our settings. And we just need to set that to -1 foot now. Now that we've placed in a 1 foot thick deck. So there we go. And because I'm looking at this from the top and this is the view I really want to see, this is a perfect opportunity to use our surface overrides. And we're just going to change this to a concrete light color that is transparent so that we can actually see right through it, because that makes it a lot easier to understand what's going on down below for coordination purposes. And so these walls here, what I actually need to do is I'm just going to select all those and we're just going to zero that out, because that now is a full floor to floor. So there's always a little bit of cleanup we can do. With this particular element here, we can see there's a little bit of overlap, but that's actually overlap that's built into the stair element itself. And so, okay. Okay, so a few other stairs we got to cut out. So I'm going to select here, do a minus, click my point. So we're going to do one there. And we can actually just take this whole, no, we could in that case. I'm going to do another. And now that I think about it here, we probably want to shift all this over, because we don't really, come on, grab it. We don't really want that opening running through there. So we can pull this whole thing over, and I'm going to just get this stair to match up. Probably have some either beam or maybe some PT running through right at that point. So I still didn't get that at the right location. Okay, so moving right along, I'm going to override this one as well. And we're ready to pretty much take this thing and run with it. So we'll continue up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my trace reference, and I'm going to go down one level, and I'm going to do this one by one, because we're going to do a few quick adjustments with our columns and slabs. And so let's grab our column. Actually, we'll just grab all of them. We're going to grab our columns, grab our walls. We're going to grab our stairs as well. And I think that is it for now. I'm going to copy all these. Come up one level, and we're going to paste. And we can see we got an issue here with our stairs. So let's go in and let's see what's happening here. So our stairs, it's given us our stair has invalid height. So what we want to do here is let's open this up, and it's -11 feet, because right now our home story is level 2, and we just want that to be 0. So there we go. All those are good. And we need to make some adjustments on our columns, because our columns had an issue there. And so I'm going to grab all these and just 0 that out. And we can leave the tops in this case all set up there. I'm going to delete out those. And okay, so we're looking pretty good here. So we can fly around and just do some quick spot checks and make sure that we have everything where we want it. So these slabs here, so we got two different scenarios here. This one starting from there, that's fine. This one here, we need to adjust this up, and we'll just take that to 0 and take that to 0. So we'll just clean some of these up. And I'm going to make that common for both of these. So that we're just merging right between zeros, zeros, and okay. So again, let's go back and we will just now start checking on our estimate again. So I'm gonna republish this. We'll come back to our estimate and we're just gonna refresh this, and we're just gonna watch this continue to grow. So a lot of these numbers here we can adjust up and down later, and we can do that at the end, and I'll show you how easy it is to just adjust the entire project at once. But at this point, I think we're good on everything except for we did not grab our ramp. So I'm going to grab these, and I'm going to come up, and let's just paste that through, and let's adjust our section. So we'll pull that down. Pull this down, and okay. So again, we're building. Let me make sure that these are on the right layers. Ramps, yes, yes. So okay, let's continue. And really at this point, what I can do is I'm just going to grab, I think I'm good on pretty much everything. So I'm going to grab my walls, and we've already adjusted our wall settings. And I believe that these we did fix. It should be 0. That should be 0. Okay, so we got those. This one should be 0 also. We're going to 0 those out. Okay, so now we fix those. Grabbed all our walls. We're going to grab all of our columns. We're going to grab our slabs, our stairs, and our ramp over here. And let's just continue. I'm going to select all that and paste all that. And I can see that those stairs are giving me more of an issue. It's, how can we, oh, you know what? Because I was grabbing stairs from the first floor as well. So I was grabbing 2 sets of stairs there. That's what was off. So we got too many of these getting copied up. And hopefully that's going to fix us on the next one. We'll have to be careful with that. Only show these on the home story. Stairs. Where is my setting for that? Structure. I think, oh, there it is. We'll just do home story only for now. Home story only. Okay. So hopefully that fixes our issue. And okay, so right now we are up through level 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to add in, let's just do one more of this. So I'm going to go back to 2D here, and I'm just going to select, again, all my walls, columns, slabs, stairs, and ramps. Where's my ramp? My roofs. And we'll copy this. Paste that in. And I'm going to only pull up one more right now of, actually I'm on my, I'm maxed out on my stories right now. So we need to add in more stories. So let's go ahead and we'll do that right now. And we'll kind of just, we'll do this very quickly. And so, yeah, we didn't even look at these just yet, but we can actually play around with these floor to floor heights later as well, which is cool because then if everything is constrained to the right, top and bottom elevations, if you get that all set up right, then you can start adjusting the height of your stories and actually refresh your estimate based off that. So let's go ahead and what I'm going to do is, I think since I already pasted stuff on my roof level, I'm going to call this level 4, and I'm just going to call this podium level 6. And so from here, I'm just going to go 10 feet as we go up. So, and let's just go up to maybe, I don't know, 20 stories. And we'll add one more in after that. We'll call this roof deck. Insert above, high roof, and call that good. So, okay. So there we go. We have all of our stories. All these elements are on our level 4. And I don't think they're linked right now because they didn't have a story on top of them. So we can come in here, add one more for position, elevation to project 0. And we can grab all those and we can just link them to our podium. So, okay, there we go. And so now when I go to my level 4, I'm going to take my podium deck and I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste that right here, and I'm going to close off that because we don't have a ramp anymore there, and we might still have those shear walls coming up and through, but we might close that out as well. And at this point, maybe we'll just leave that as is, and let's see what that looks like. So, okay, so now we have our podium deck, and I'm going to just put a note here that this is my podium. And all right, so now we're minutes away from copying up the rest of the tower. So let's go ahead and get our shape of our deck in there. And so what I'll do is I'm going to come down to my level 2 because that's where my typical, what I want an 8-inch deck. So I'm going to pick up that slab, and I'm going to come up now to my level 6 because that's essentially where I'm working from. And I'm going to turn on my podium as a trace reference. Actually, my level 4 is a trace. And so I'm just going to start from, essentially, we'll just go from grid to grid on the shape of our tower. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to give everything an offset of, let's go 4 feet. And if I wanted to give it a bit more definition, say adding a few balconies and stuff, we could certainly do that as well. So maybe I'll add a balcony there and add a balcony on that end. Can add one there. And so we can push some of these just out, just 3 feet. One more foot just to get a little bit more definition as we're going up here. So from the column out, you can cantilever, 6-7 feet, no problem. So we'll pull that out, and we're just going to do this for each of the different sides. Offset. Okay, not the prettiest shape, but oh well. Give that corner unit a nice balcony. Okay, so there we go. And we don't have any columns supporting it just yet. So I need to actually go in to my level 4. And I'm going to grab all these columns right here. Pick all these up. And we'll also grab our core and our stairs within there. So I'm going to grab those. I'm actually going to grab that slab as well. Do a Control C and podium. I'm going to paste that. And I might have overlapping slabs here. I might have already pasted one up. I think maybe. But let's see. So there we go. We're starting to climb, but we need to go in and find all of these columns and make the adjustment, because now that we have an 8-inch slab, we need to change our top constraint to -8 inches. So there we go. And at this point, we could probably start thinking about shrinking down our column sizes as we go. So, but we can also play with that at the very end after we've modeled this whole thing. So I can also see my walls poking through here. So first thing, I just want to make sure that I'm at the right elevation with my slab before I do a lot of adjustments. So height and home offset. So okay, so we're good there. These probably don't have a top link, so I need to change them to that. And we're going to go -8. Actually, no, we're just going to leave 0. There we are. And our stairs, I think they're supposed to be just 10 feet tall. We're going to link them with 0 in there. And so we need to do a little cutting out up here on our slab. So let's do a minus here. Once we get through the rest of this modeling exercise, we'll go in and we'll talk a bit more about the sorry, lost my train of thought. We'll go in and talk a little bit more about the formulas and just really kind of hammer through some of those formulas and really show you how that's working. And so, okay, so let's go down, and I'm now going to copy up. I already have one of these on my, I already have a slab. Hold on. Experiencing a little freezing issue. There we go. So this is showing on both those. So I'm going to do home story only just to make it a little easier to understand what is where. So I'm going to pull up my columns, my walls, my stairs, do a Control C. We're going to paste those in. Okay, so we're moving up, and I also need that interior slab. So I'm going to grab that, pull that up. Okay, so at this point, what we can do is I'm going to just grab all of these. And so all these columns here, I can adjust the sizing on. So maybe at this point, we will change this down to a 36, 24 by 36 will do for all of these. So I'm going to change that to 3 feet. And okay, so that shrunk them all down a little bit. So as we continue, we'll be adjusting those. These two core walls, maybe I'll just take them to 18 inches and adjust the width there. And so we can see our transition because we have our trace reference turned on. And this one here could probably, because our stairs are on the other side, probably have this on the wrong side. So I'm going to flip it and keep that core wall on the stairwell side. And okay, so at this point, I think we are ready to grab all of our columns, all of our walls, all of our slabs, and our stairs. And let's just do a test here before we copy way up, and we'll paste that. And let's see. So there we go. Columns are shrinking. We're starting to move up. And it looks like our stairs and everything are really pretty dialed in. So, okay, so at this point, what I can do is I can just either copy and paste these all the way up, or I can do a multiple copy. If I go to move, where is it? It's somewhere under edit, move, edit elements by story. So what I want to do is I want to copy from my 7th story, and I'm doing a copy action, and I'm doing all types except I want to make sure I have my grid lines turned off. Hopefully they're not even on this list as an option. I don't think they are. So we're going to do all types, and we're just going to take this all the way through, and we'll just build this whole thing out. And we'll take it up to our roof deck, and then from there we'll finish things out from there. So I think we are good, and let's go ahead and just checking one more time. We don't have our grids, so okay. So this always takes just a little second. So pasting through there. Let's go back to 3D, and there we go. So at this point, we got a lot of concrete in there. Let's go back and we'll check our quantity takeoffs. So we can see that this has taken a bit more time, and now our floor construction is really, we got a lot of stuff under there. And if we expand this, it's going to have tons and tons of items there. So what's cool about these schedules though in ArchiCAD is, we have a lot that's arranged in these formats now, but we could also break this up even more by going to our first 2 schedules. So if we did that, then our floor construction now is broken out into individual stories, which is really nice. But whenever you do this, when you start, just a warning, whenever you start messing with the contents and the properties that you have listed in your interactive schedules, you actually need to make sure that your formatting, which gets published out every time you redo this, is still going to work in your on the linked estimate side. So if I publish this right now, we can go back and let's see what happens when we refresh this. With, instead of having 1, we have 2. We're combining both those into a heading. So if we refresh, let's see what happens. So all this just disappeared there because we were changing up the order of things, and we were essentially shifting everything over one column so that now our source columns are not going to be pulling from the right row. So we can see under our units here, our units are actually, if I click up in the formula, they're actually pulling from the quantities instead of the unit of cubic yards. So in order to fix that, what we need to do is we either need to just drop it back down to having one particular element, or we can also change this, the order of things. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back to my first schedule. But if I wanted to see this whole report instead of in unit format, to see it by story, I can switch this over. And now all those elements are actually going to just be filtered, obviously, with the heading of what level it's on. So this is another way of looking at it. And from here, if we go back and publish this now, we can then go back in, and when we refresh this again, so that just loaded everything up, and it's in a totally different format now. We now have, instead of our heading being the uniformat, we still do have uniformat here, just in this additional code that was getting pulled from the side. But we now have it all organized and broken out by street level, or sorry, not by street level, but just by model level. So, and yeah, one thing to point out here, because I see this down here at the bottom, is if I refresh this data, you can see that my data actually grew a little bit larger than my my set over here, which is something you really got to pay attention to if you have an expanding set of data that then retracts in size. Is right now this is additional data that was left over from the last time. So if I pull that out, and this as well, then these over here will just zero out based on that. So okay, so there we go. We got a lot of cost rolling through here now. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the major points I wanted to hit on the on this. Let's let me show you. Let me see. Let's go back here, and we can actually just finish out this tower. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to selectively grab that. I actually see that I need to really offset all those slab edges to get them to match up with that that wall there. So that's going to be additional volume. We could grab this, grab the stairs. Probably don't need that core wall on the top level, but I'm going to come up one. Should have grabbed that interior slab. But yeah, that's starting to really finish off our tower there. So don't really need that one. We might have a mechanical space up above, or a larger slab needed there. So I grab this, paste that, and I'm going to actually grab one more of these. And I'm just going to extend this out. And maybe we have a roof section up here. And in order to support that, we must bring up just a few columns. Probably something along that edge. So we'll pull these in. Pull those, get rid of that one, and let's make all those columns much smaller. Let's just make them 1 footers. 1 foot by 1 foot. Or maybe we could just change it up entirely and make them round. Who knows? Make them 18 inches. Okay, so there we go. We got a lot of stuff in here. And all right, let's do one more look at this with our quantity report. And so I just want to comb through what we actually have here. And I actually like having it under uniformat versus my home story. So I'm going to drop that and switch it back. And I'm going to pull this over. And so we got a nice summary here. Everything being on one package. We have identifications for our type, which again are really, if we're pulling through based on a cubic yards, then our formula is really just going to be pulling this net volume. But in some cases, we are pulling our square footage. And so we can either pull that from, so if we freeze our header, from our surface area or our area. Our area in this case is probably a better one because surface area, they're exactly the same, but typically, if we're looking at slabs and we want to use an area, well, really it doesn't matter for those, but surface area could sometimes take the surface area of all elements or all surfaces of an element. So for example, let's see if I can find an example of this. So for a wall, and I might be off in what I'm trying to say right now, my surface area, so my area here is 175 because that's the projection on the floor plan. And my surface area is 1908, but that actually matches up with my net surface area on the outside face, where if I was estimating based off square footage, then either one of those numbers would supply the right value for me. But anyway, all these details over here, because if I scroll back through here, let's just walk through these different sections. So I have general quantity sections, which can apply to pretty much all different types of model elements. I have wall values coming through specifically for the walls, so you can see real easily which elements, without even seeing the name over on this side, we can see that those are all, let me pull this over. We can see which ones are walls, which ones are not. We can see our beams, which actually appears to be pulling through our width on our walls as well. We have our column values. We have our slab values. And then we have additional details over here that we're not really using right now to drive any of our estimating, but if you wanted to go down to the like the trade level, then this is where all these different types can really start being useful to dial in the costs for different systems that make up, in this case, concrete, whether it's formwork. We actually have rebar in this, but everything that we've been doing is actually populating another report for rebar. If you want to track your placing and finishing separately, your equipment, your labor, you have a lot of different options here to really break out different costs and dial in a lot more detail if you want to assemble it that way. And what's nice is it's all easily customizable within Excel, and you can formulate those sheets to really work how you want them to. So I'm going to give this one more publish here, and we'll go back to our estimate. And so I'm going to refresh this. And so there we go. And what's actually interesting here is I actually have one row hidden. And if I open this up, this actually is just a few different charts that are being produced from this data set itself. And I just have a few additional, cancel that. I have a few additional formulas up here that are just pulling things through to produce these charts specifically. So that makes it nice and easy to get some graphical representation. And what's cool is if we go back to our data sources, we could see this tells us when our last date was modified and the time. So 12/41, we just published one. And here under my CSI summary, I can see all that cost is rolling in and summarizing up underneath my my individual building package. So that's just one line item out of this entire worksheet that can really summarize everything up and make it really easy. And yeah, and you can break it out and customize things based on how many different packages you might have, and really customize your cost for your owner or your project client. So okay, well, I think with that, let's go back, and if there's any other questions, then go ahead and please ask them now. I do apologize for missing the mic there at the beginning, and yes, I'll have to go back and do a voiceover there, and hopefully that doesn't sound too awkward. But yeah, appreciate you guys coming on and checking out this this video. I will show one other thing that's pretty cool here, or at least I think so, is we can go now. We've been doing concrete this entire time, talking about concrete, but we also have some of these other reports are also being driven from the exact same source data. So for rebar, for example, we didn't have to do anything with this report. And actually, we do have to do one thing because we're still pulling through that that hot link. In order to get rid of that hot link, I would just add hot link source is not, and that should get rid of our hot link. And we could publish this out. And then we could come in and we'd actually go to our rebar sheet here, and we can load all that in at once. And why is that value not working? Let's see if there's an error down here somewhere. So there is an error right there. So why did that happen? So in this case, sometimes in Excel you really need to be you need to have this if error then 0, and so I don't believe that got pulled all the way down. I can see somewhere here my formula is changing, so I could actually just grab this single formula, pull that down, and that will clean up that last little value where it was pulling an error through because it wasn't listed as a 0. So that's one thing that need to pay attention to. So in this case, I'm using I have a unit cost, which is essentially a dollars per pound and dollars per unit. This is where I'm specifying how many pounds per unit. So if I'm doing cubic yards, then I have 150 pounds per cubic yards. So calculating total pounds, converting to tons, and so my total cost here is actually just my unit cost by my total pounds, but it's calculating tonnage here, and we can keep that there just as it is, and it's just an additional info if we want it. So okay, so we're getting pretty much to the end of it here. I think it might be helpful to maybe just kind of walk through this formula once, and so let's do that. So if we read through this formula, we have a if scenario of if this F11 is cubic yards, then it's going to find R11. So that's the most common formula and the most common case for doing concrete. So that makes it really easy to just pull cubic yards for any of these element types, regardless of the type. And that's our first one because that's our most key one. So our second formula here is if and F11 is square footage and it's a slab, then I'm going over and I'm finding this T11, which is in this case just the area that we were talking about earlier. The next one over, if and F11 is square footage and is a stair, then it's finding T11 also. So that's kind of a duplicate of that. So I could have probably done an if and or, and that would have worked. So if and F11 is square footage in a wall, then I'm actually going and finding a different value here and going over and using my U11, which is right here. So that's under my surface area again. And this just continues. So square footage of roofs, find that value, square footage of, or linear footage of beam. If I'm pricing it based on that, then it's finding a different value over here, AD11, which is the length of it. And so on with linear footage on a wall. So that's going to be finding that N11, which is somewhere back here. No. Of wall. Then I'm substituting actually this W11 because length of the wall. If it brings a foot marker through, then sometimes you got to do a substitution on it to get that not to come up as an error. But that's pretty much it. So that's pretty much how all these formulas are set up. And once you do one, it's really easy because you can just pull this down and you can see that none of that data changed there because that formula applies to all of these. So, okay. I don't know if I missed anything except for the first 30 minutes of audio. But if there's no questions, then I think I'm going to, we'll pretty much wrap this up, and we will take a real quick look real quickly at what we're doing next week. So Okay, so for next week, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to be more on a visual side of how to use ArchiCAD. And so what I want to do is build a 3D site plan in ArchiCAD and use a lot of Google Earth in terms of going out, finding the right satellite imagery and street imagery textures so that we can start building our 3D site and really creating an immersive and interesting site logistics plan, or just an exterior context for what we want to have our project model sit within. So we're going to be talking a lot about just bringing textures through, how to do measurements actually in Google Earth so that we can get the accurate topos and elevations. We'll be modeling buildings with the morph tool is a really great tool for doing exterior buildings outside of the property lines of your site, but just the morph tool is a really powerful tool for doing different texture mapping from just quick imagery that we can grab. But we'll also talk about some different 3D styles of kind of fading out some of the exterior context and doing different graphic overrides to really get an interesting look. And yeah, hopefully we'll have fun with that modeling process of building a site within ArchiCAD. And yeah, and we'll have fun next week. So yeah, if you have any questions on this, or if you're interested in learning more about ContraBIM, then definitely check out our website. If you're interested in using any of these example files or any of these template files that we're showing, which are all really meant for a construction manager or a subcontractor, more so than for designers, but it has obviously the full functionality in ArchiCAD for designing really anything you want to design at the same time. So we're just extending that functionality to really try to capture what's really important and useful for the GCs and subcontractors as well. So, okay, with that, I think I'm going to sign off and catch my breath a little bit before I go back in and do the voiceover for the first 30 minutes or whatever length of time there was no sound. And yeah, appreciate you guys hanging on there. And yeah, we will hopefully see you on the next live stream video. We're also going to be putting out short segments of some of these workflows to really try to slow down and explain some of the concepts in greater detail. And we'll do some sidebar tutorials so that people can ask questions. And yeah, just try to keep the dialogue going. And yeah, thanks for joining. Make sure to subscribe to keep up to date with all the latest coming out. And with that, I'm going to sign off. So thanks, and have a great weekend.